Have you ever felt like no one sees you? Like everyone treats you as if you're insignificant? But what if I told you that the boy everyone ignores has a secret that could change everything? Jamal was 13 years old, and every day at school was a battle. He wasn't strong, he wasn't popular, and he was definitely not the kind of kid who commanded respect. The worst part? He was one of the only black students in a school full of kids who thought that was a reason to laugh. "Hey, Jamal." Tyler, the leader of the bullies, called out, sticking his foot out. Jamal tripped and fell, his notebook scattering across the hallway. Everyone laughed. Everyone. Even those who didn't personally bully him. He was used to it. But that didn't mean it hurt any less. What no one knew was that Jamal was the son of one of the most dangerous men in the city, Dominic King Carter, the Mafia boss. One phone call, and those kids would never dare to look at him the wrong way again. But Jamal never told anyone. Because deep down, he didn't want to be respected out of fear. He wanted to be respected for who he was. But what if, instead of revenge, he could teach those bullies a lesson they would never forget? After another day of insults and humiliation, Jamal went to the old warehouse where his father held secret meetings. He sat on a wooden bench, staring at the wall covered in photos, plans, and notes. His father approached. "Do you want me to take care of this for you, son?" Dominic's deep voice echoed through the space. Jamal looked up at him. For a moment, the idea of seeing Tyler and his gang terrified was tempting. But then he took a deep breath. "No, Dad. I need to handle this my own way." Dominic smirked, surprised. "So what are you going to do?" Jamal gave a mysterious smile. "I'm going to make them feel exactly the way I feel. But without violence." The next day, Jamal did something he had never done before. He started observing. In math class, he noticed Tyler always hit his tests. Was he as smart as he pretended to be? During PE, he saw that Jake, one of the bullies, always changed clothes with his back turned to the others. Insecurity? At lunch, he realized that Emily, the girl who laughed at him every day, barely ate. Jamal was collecting information. But for what? The following week, something strange happened. Tyler was called to solve a problem on the board. He tried to act confident but froze. Jamal smirked. "Having trouble, Tyler?" The class laughed. Tyler shot him a furious look. Later, in the locker room, Jamal spoke loud enough for others to hear. "Did you know that most people who bully others are actually hiding their own insecurities?" Jake, who always changed with his back turned, swallowed hard. At lunch, Jamal sat near Emily and, without looking at her, said, "Sometimes we laugh at others to hide our own pain. But at the end of the day, the pain is still there." Emily put down her fork and stayed silent. Jamal wasn't attacking. He was exposing. And that was much worse. The next day, no one messed with Jamal. He walked through the hallway as if nothing had happened, but the stairs were there. Confused. Guilty. Tyler started to push him but stopped midway. Jake avoided his gaze. Emily didn't even show up to school. The power wasn't in revenge. The power was in the truth. But this was only the beginning. And if I told you the game isn't over? That the lesson Jamal wanted to teach was far from finished? You won't believe what happens next. Jamal started a dangerous game. But was he ready for the consequences? Because when you expose people's shadows, they might fight back. The next morning, Jamal walked into school and noticed something strange. Silence. No shoving. No mocking laughter. No mean notes taped to his back. But what intrigued him the most was the way everyone looked at him. Like he was a chess piece that had suddenly started moving on its own. Tyler, Jake, Emily, they all avoided him. But something in their eyes said this wasn't over. At lunch, Jamal smelled it before he felt it. Splash. Milk spilled all over his shirt. The cafeteria exploded with laughter. Tyler stood there, holding the empty milk carton, a victorious grin on his face. "You think you're smarter than me, Jamal?" Jamal calmly wiped his shirt. He wasn't going to react. But then, Tyler made a mistake. "You can be whoever's son you want, but you'll always be a loser." Jamal's heart stopped for a second. Does he know? But Tyler laughed and walked away, unaware of the truth in his words. That night, Dominic Carter was waiting for his son in his office. They're pushing harder now, aren't they? Jamal nodded. What are you going to do next? Jamal looked at his father, the man who could make anyone disappear with a single call. But that wasn't what he wanted. I'm going to change the story, Dad, not with fear. With truth. Dominic blew out a slow puff of smoke, studying his son. Then be smart, kid. Because truth can be more dangerous than a bullet. The next day, Jamal walked into his classroom and wrote 3 giant questions on the board. What do you hide the most from others? Why are you afraid of being truly seen? What would happen if people knew who you really are? The class walked in, and the teacher frowned. Jamal, what is this? He stepped back and looked at the class. Just some questions. The teacher hesitated but didn't erase them. And then, something unexpected happened. Jake, the bully who always changed with his back turned, looked at the board and walked out of the room. Emily bit her lip and lowered her head. And Tyler? Tyler just stood there, staring at the questions like they were a mirror showing something he didn't want to see. After school, Jamal found Jake alone by the bike racks. Why did you write that? Jake asked, not looking at him. Jamal smiled. Because it's the truth. Jake took a deep breath. I hate the way I am. His voice was almost a whisper. Jamal didn't say anything. He just waited. My brother used to call me weak when I was a kid. He said if I showed any weakness, I'd be destroyed. Jamal nodded. So you take it out on others. Jake stared at the ground, ashamed. I don't want to be like this. Jamal patted his shoulder. Then stop. And walked away. The next day, Jake didn't laugh at Tyler's jokes. He didn't push anyone. And when Emily tripped and dropped her books, he was the one who helped her pick them up. The game was changing. But Tyler wasn't going to accept that so easily. What happens when a bully feels cornered? He attacks. But is Jamal prepared for the worst? Jamal knew Tyler wouldn't accept losing control of the school so easily. But he didn't expect it to happen so fast. The moment he walked into the hallway, everyone was staring at him. Some whispered. Others looked, scared. Then he saw it. His locker. Spray-painted in bold red letters, dead. Jamal closed his eyes for a second. This wasn't a joke anymore. The atmosphere at school had shifted. Something felt different. In English class, Tyler was relaxed, grinning like he had just won a game no one else knew was being played. At lunch, Jamal noticed Jake and Emily were unusually quiet. What's wrong? He asked. Jake hesitated. He said he knows things about us. Emily swallowed hard. Things that could ruin us. Jamal looked across the cafeteria. Tyler was on his phone, sending messages. Then, a sound. Ding. Emily's phone vibrated. Her face turned pale as she read the text. Jamal leaned over to see it. I know what you're hiding. If you want to keep it a secret, stay away from Jamal. Jamal clenched his fists. Tyler was playing dirty. But he wasn't going to back down. During the next class, Tyler was bragging to his friends, laughing at something on his phone. Jamal walked up slowly. Hey, Tyler. The bully turned, smirking. You still have the guts to talk to me, loser? Jamal gave a small smile. I just wanted to thank you. Tyler frowned. Thank me? Yeah, you taught me something important. Jamal pulled out his own phone and played a video. On the screen, Tyler was in the principal's office, yelling. His face was red with anger. You can't punish me. My dad funds this school. You have no right. Tyler's friends stopped laughing. Jamal tilted his head. You know what's interesting, Tyler? Power is a fragile thing. Tyler snatched the phone from his hands, furious. Where did you get this? Jamal crossed his arms. You think you're the only one who can play this game? Tyler's face turned red. For the first time, he had nothing to say. But this wasn't over yet. Jamal could feel it. That evening, as he walked home, he felt the tension in the air. He knew Tyler wouldn't let this slide. But he didn't expect to be surrounded. You went too far, Jamal. Tyler stepped out of the shadows, flanked by 2 boys. Jamal's heart pounded. He glanced around. No way out. What now? Tyler sneered. Is your Mafia daddy gonna save you? Jamal took a deep breath. He wasn't going to use his father as a shield. I don't need him to deal with cowards like you. The punch came fast. Jamal hit the ground, the taste of blood in his mouth. But he didn't scream. He didn't beg. He just looked Tyler in the eyes and whispered, "You know you've already lost, right?" Tyler hesitated. Jamal grinned, spitting out blood. You don't scare anyone anymore. Tyler clenched his fists. But deep down, he knew it was true. He had no power left. The next day, something happened that no one expected. Tyler didn't show up to school. Rumors spread. Some said he was suspended. Others claimed his parents transferred him. But the truth? Jamal never told anyone. He knew he hadn't beaten Tyler with violence. Not with fear. He had beaten him with the truth. And truth was the most powerful weapon of all. What happens after an empire falls? What remains when fear disappears? Jamal defeated Tyler, but was the school ready to change? The school felt different. The air was lighter, the conversations freer. Tyler was gone, and with him, the terror that ruled the hallways. But Jamal knew the truth. The absence of a tyrant didn't mean the end of oppression. In history class, the teacher spoke about revolutions, how, often, when a cruel leader fell, another would rise to take their place. Jamal looked around. Would someone try to fill Tyler's void? He wasn't going to wait to find out. During lunch, he stood up in the middle of the cafeteria and slammed his tray on the table, drawing everyone's attention. First, I want to ask something. Who here was humiliated by Tyler? Hesitant hands began to rise. First one, then another. Even Jake raised his. And who here laughed at his jokes, even knowing it was wrong? This time, more hands went up. Emily lowered her head and raised hers too. Silence filled the room. Jamal took a deep breath. We can pretend everything changed just because Tyler is gone. But if someone like him shows up tomorrow, what are we going to do? Laugh again? Pretend it's not our problem? Glances were exchanged across the cafeteria. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed deep in thought. Then Jake stood up. I was a coward. I laughed because I didn't want to be the next target. Emily stood up too. Me too. One by one, other students followed. Jamal smiled. We can't change the past. But we can choose to be different now. And in that moment, the entire school changed. That night, Jamal returned home and found his father sitting in his office, reading a newspaper. Dominic looked up and smirked. I hear you're running the school now. Jamal chuckled. Not exactly. Dominic folded the newspaper and crossed his arms. You defeated your enemy without lifting a finger. You turned people against him with the truth. That's more than I've seen many men my age accomplish. Jamal leaned against the wall, thoughtful. I just wanted things to change. Dominic watched him for a moment. You could be great in my world, son. A natural leader. Jamal shook his head. No, Dad. I want to be great in my own world. Mafia boss Carter let out a low chuckle and stood, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. Then go and build it, kid. The next morning, Jamal arrived at school and noticed something different. People weren't just looking at him. They were looking at themselves. No one laughed when someone was humiliated. No one stayed silent when they saw injustice. Jamal didn't want to be a king. He wanted no one to need one. He opened his locker and found a note pinned to the door. Thank you. No signature. No name. But he didn't need one. He already knew he had one. And that was Jamal's story. A boy who could have chosen revenge but chose something even more powerful, the truth. And now I ask you, if it were you, what would you have done?